Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm with a comedian. He was just highlighted on when BBC came to town. He has his own podcast. I forget, what's it called? It's called
We Didn't Get a Rose.
We Didn't Get a Rose. It's about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And this is the first time he's been in studio here, but he's been here virtually on Monica Nevi's Dumb Pitches podcast. Mm-hmm. And he also produces a comedy show. It's my pleasure to have the one and only Chris Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Of course. When I was doing research on you, did you know there's a 14-year-old producer named Chris Mejia also?
I did not know, and now I'm going to be sending him a cease and desist because it can only be one. It's honestly, I'm so upset with my parents because Chris is one of the most common names.
Yeah.
And then Mejia in the Latin community is a very common name. Mm-hmm. So they're just like, you feeling unique in any way, shape, or form with your name, you're fucked. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just that's why I have my my social handles be Topher Mejia, because Chris was taken.
Oh.
And all four, Chris Mejia was taken. And then I don't like having numbers. I just rather have to clean. And I didn't want to do Chris comedy or Chris Mejia comedy or anything like that. I wanted it to where it was just more of just my name.
Yeah.
So I thought, Topher, some people go by Chris, Topher Grace from That 70 Show and all that. And now everyone thinks I go by Topher, and no, just on the social handle.
That's funny.
And also people don't know how to spell Topher apparently, because when I say that, they're like, how do you spell that? And I thought it was obvious, and it is not obvious.
Because I don't even know how you thought of Topher, though. Because Topher is one of those weird white people's names.
Well, see, that's why I did it, because I thought white people know Topher, and then apparently white people don't know Topher.
It's on the same plane as someone named Tanner. I feel like Topher and Tanner. I feel like those could be brothers or some shit.
Yeah, it's definitely I agree. Shortening Christopher to Topher is
oh,
yeah,
that's where. Okay, that's.
See, exactly. It was one of those at the time when I made it, and I've just committed. I'm because I also want all my handles to be the same. So it's just literally Topher Mejia on everything.
Got it.
You just look that up and it's going to be consistent. But it's just no one knows. No one even realizes that's where the Topher comes from.
That's funny as fuck.
So it's just it's just been self-destructive ever since.
I didn't even know Mejia was a last name, to be honest. And
really?
When I looked up Chris Mejia, I'm telling you, this 14-year-old producer comes up first.
I gotta fight this kid now.
You have to fight this 14-year-old.
The fact that he has better SEO than me, he's just coming up first when you type Chris Mejia.
Yeah.
Were you doing just Chris Mejia right off the bat, or Chris Mejia comedy?
Just Chris Mejia. See, you said you don't want to add comedy at the end.
Yeah, you know what? See, now I'm realizing the reason why I'm not further in life is my own doing. It's not because of gatekeepers. It's not because of the quality of my craft. It is because I have not gone with Chris Mejia comedy.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm just going to go home and cry now.
So how'd you get connected with BBC?
So that was something that it felt out of nowhere.
Wait, actually, first tell people, I don't know if everyone even knows, but BBC, British Broadcasting Network.
Yeah, the Safe for Work BBC, they, on their World Service Radio, they have a show called The Arts Hour, where Nikki Betty, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. That is not how you pronounce your name. Nikki, I'm sorry. You're an amazing person. Thank you so much. She hosts the show, and she interviews all kinds of people who do all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And they do an American tour. And I want to say they've done it before, and then obviously COVID couldn't. And they only did 3 cities, New York, LA, and Seattle. And basically each show showcases what the city has to offer in terms of culture and arts, and how it's an innovator in those arts. Mm-hmm. So for the Seattle show, essentially someone reached out to BBC, because BBC was booking musicians and all that, and then they asked do you know anyone in the comedy scene? And my homie Bo was originally reached out to, but he felt like he wasn't what the show was wanting. So
I think I met that guy. I think he's been to the studio.
Tall white guy.
Yeah, he's been on someone's podcast here.
Okay, yeah. So he was like, I don't think I'm the best fit for your podcast, but here's some comics I would recommend. And he threw my name in. And then basically the BBC producer reached out to me, and then that's how we got connected. And it was funny because when I got his email, I thought it was spam. Like, I didn't think it was real. I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, you're from the BBC. Like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna click on this link, and then now you have all of my pin codes and all that. But no, I got connected with them, and then essentially they were like, you know, we want your set to kind of be about Seattle and what life in Seattle's like. And I have some jokes that are about Seattle, but ultimately, as a comedian, you don't want to do jokes that you can only do in one area.
Right.
Or at least you don't want to spend time like honing in on your craft and crafting bits that require you to be in one location. Like, it's more ideal to have jokes that could be done wherever you're booked.
Wow.
So like, yes, I have jokes that happen that mention things about Seattle because I've lived in Seattle for 7+ years, but I just, like, overall, I didn't have like a 5-minute back-to-back jokes about Seattle. So I had to write some stuff for the show, but it was great. It was definitely, it's funny because like in comedy, I don't know how other art forms are, like other art forms that require you to do live performances, but comedy is one that like is just this very painful grind that really breaks at your soul and can tear you down. But the highs in it are just like higher than any drug that you could ever experience. And depending on your career, you either have a lot of highs, either because you're really, really good, or you're really, really lucky, or you're both. For some, the highs are here and there. But for me, that show is one of my highs of it was just so much fun. And all of the BBC people were some of the nicest people.
Did they all have accents too?
They had accents. And I find British accents goofy. Which is funny because it's like they're what English started. Yeah. Like there's a reason why they're English in parentheses traditional. So it's really like an oxymoron to be the one saying they're goofy when really we're the goofy ones. Yeah. But it's just they just say things like cheers, and I'm just like, what? That's not how you talk. Like you don't say words like that.
And then they put the X at the end of their email. Have you seen that?
Okay, my favorite thing, because before we were getting the show, everyone who was on the show and Nikki, we were all just talking, and Nikki was like, a fun game I like to play is like discussing like what we call things differently. And she was like, oh, like we don't call pants, we call them trousers. And I'm like, that's fucking weird. I'm glad we threw your tea in the ocean. And then I took that comment back because she was like, we don't call, like, you know how you call them fanny packs? And I was like, yeah, we don't call them fanny packs. And I'm thinking like, oh, is it because does fanny mean bum? Like, is that what it is? She's like, no, we call them bum packs because fanny in the UK means pussy. And I was like, this is going to be my favorite thing I've heard all year. The fact that, of course, just you're like going to America, you're like, why is everyone wearing pussy packs? Like, why do you call it pussy packs? That makes no sense. So it was just like, after hearing that, I'm like, okay, now I'm a big fan of the UK and everything that y'all do. But no, they all have British accents, but they're all super nice people. And it was also just cool. In comedy, it doesn't happen often where you get to meet other forms of art. Yeah. In the other, and especially specifically the other forms of the Seattle art scene. Like, it's super rare, if not never happens, that I get to meet people who are in the like poetry scene or in the filmmaking scene or who are in music. And it's just cool to like, I'm someone who especially after doing comedy, I have grown even further appreciation for all types of art forms or creative forms, especially those who perform live, where like, I don't even look at it in the sense of like, oh, like what they're doing is super cool, but more in the sense of like looking at it a technical aspect of just like trying, like just realizing like, oh, like the way I like work on comedy and I craft, like work on the jokes and like hone in on them and try to get them tight and all that. You do that with your dance or your art or your music or whatever. And it's just like cool knowing that like the way I view comedy, people are viewing their creative form. Yeah. And they're pursuing it in a similar way. And to me, that's cool. And like, I always get fascinated about the differences, like how they approach things differently. But also there a lot of creative art forms like function like similarly. Like music and comedy is very similar where there's a lot of rhythm in comedy, just like how obviously music rhythm and music. And in the way things flow, like sometimes people laugh not because of the wording, but because the way the rhythm of the joke goes, just like something in their brain just tells them this is the moment I'm supposed to laugh.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just cool how like a lot of creative art forms are like that, where it's just like structurally at its very core, they're the same, but then obviously they accomplish widely different things.
100%. And that's one reason why I want to start having more comedians on. You're probably like the 4th comedian I've had on overall. And there is so many, like, there's a lot of correlation between, because I focus on music mostly, between musicians and comedians. And just how you're talking about, like, you're saying you don't really focus on, when I see some specials or something, they'll make jokes about the city they're in, but it's not, they're not making, the whole set's not going to be tailored to.
Right.
And then, like, you're saying that you wouldn't tailor a whole entire set just for Seattle.
Yeah, it's like, it's definitely like, it's usually like a good way to open a set of making a comment about where you're at. Because people also love talking about themselves. Like, there's a reason why when you go to a concert and people are like, what's up, Cleveland? And everyone fucking loses their shit. Like, yeah, that's us. And it's just like, yeah, of course. Like, he doesn't give a shit about your city. He's just saying, what's up, city? And he's going to keep moving on. And he's going to leave and never come back unless he's being paid to. Yeah. So it's like, comedy is the same way where, like, people, like when I did my set for the BBC, essentially all I talked, like in my interview before doing my set and in my actual set, I was just shitting on Seattle the whole time. Damn. And everyone loved it. Yeah. And I was like, this is great, where I could just come up and in front of everyone who are natives and were born and raised here and have so much Seattle pride. A Floridian like me can come up and look them in the face and go, y'all fucking suck. And this is great. But it's also like, I don't mean it like in a disrespectful way. Yeah. I'm just definitely like someone growing up. Like, I grew up in Florida where everyone shits on Florida. I've always kind of grown with
everyone still shits on.
And yeah, don't get me wrong. Well deserved. Well deserved. But it's definitely like, it made me have this mentality of being able to realize that, like, having pride in where you're from is kind of stupid, because every place is stupid. Yeah. Like, everyone makes fun of Florida for being so weird, but like, a dude fucked a horse on camera in Washington. Yeah.
Fucking Enumclaw, I think.
The Enumclaw shit. And then like, laws about bestiality were made because of that tape. Like, Washington is the reason why we have stricter laws about filming bestiality. And then also Washington is like ground zero for so many serial killers. Yeah. And then like there's a bunch of other...
Think about COVID even. It fucking started in Everett.
Yeah, it started in Washington. Like, out of all places, Washington is where COVID, or at least where we found out about
the hotspot. Yeah.
So because of that, it's like, I don't mean it in the sense where one state's better than the other, where it's just like, we're all weird. Yeah. So like, let's just make fun of how we're weird and what makes us unique and different and all that. So like, when I say I was shitting on Seattle, it was just more of like, in that aspect of like pointing out like, hey, here are these flaws, but it's kind of funny, our flaws. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but that's what's so cool about comedy though. I feel like it's also changing because of the internet, but wherever you are starting off in comedy, whatever city, you kind of know you want to end up in like New York or LA to go to the main comedy clubs. And but as an artist, I guess people think about going to like LA or Tennessee or wherever, but still at the same time people get stuck in their city circle thinking that something's going to come and help them out, right?
Right.
But if you're a comedian, you probably know you can't just stay in the circuit in your home city.
It's weird because there's no rubric. Because for every person I know who moved to New York and LA, and because they moved there, they were able to find an agent, they were able to get a writing job, get on TV, whatever, and then they made it. For every one person who did that, there's 1,000 who did the exact same thing and failed and were either equally as good or better. Just like how for every person who like, they were like, you know what, I'm going to not move there and I'm going to just stay in my home base, whether it's in Seattle or San Francisco or in Austin or Atlanta. And I'm going to travel in to do the shows that I need. And then I'm going to do the big time festivals. And that's how I'm going to get representation. And that's how I'm only going to travel into the New York and LA when I have work, there's been people who've been able to do that. But then also, for every one person who's done that, there's 1,000 who did it and they didn't make it. So like, because of that, comedy doesn't have, and this is probably goes to all forms of entertainment, comedy doesn't have a rubric of like what is actually the right way. And what I've been personally learning with my career is not that you have to do what everyone says is the right way. You have to do what is right for you. Because another thing about comedy is like, the traditional way was like you work clubs and you get good at good. You host at clubs and then you get better where you start featuring at clubs and then you headline clubs, or you feature at clubs and then you start opening for like headliners who are nationally touring. You go with them and then you eventually get a late night spot. And then after getting a late night spot, you just headline clubs and then that's it. You've made it. And then maybe eventually you get your own like TV show on a network channel that only runs one season and then gets canceled.
Right.
That was like, for the longest time, traditionally, that was the process. Whereas like now, like you don't have to be a club comic and to make a following. Like you could be someone who does all of the alt and indie rooms and then have a big following. Just like how like you don't have to do that to get like there's so many paths now. Like the inclusion of the internet and the technology that we get from it and like the creation of TikTok and all of that other stuff. Yes, there's negatives, but the positives is that, and this is, I feel like applicable with music as well, where like before music, the process was like hopefully getting discovered and you get it on the radio, a label picks you up and all that. Now you can just pop your shit on SoundCloud and it blows up and then either you get signed or you just go independent. And you can just do, like, you don't have to go through the traditional gates that you previously had to. And like comedy is the same way, where like, because of the internet, you can create a following without needing to be a club comic or an alt comic, or like you can just create your own shit and blow up that way and create a following that way. And so because of that, it's like, it's great where there's a lot more freedom. But then for someone like me, it's frustrating because I like knowing what the concrete path is. Like, what are the actual steps I need to do to progress? Whereas comedy is like, there's like, you can technically do whatever you want, but there's also no guarantee that whatever, because you can do what everyone says is the right path and never make it.
Yeah.
But then you can try to do your own shit and make it, but you also, there's obviously the risk of like, you won't make it. But it's just like, so for me, it's like frustrating because I like having that guidance and that structure. But that's something I've been learning with myself of like accepting what my lane is, like not only figuring out what my lane is, but accepting that lane is going to mean that there's going to be some things that I used to think that I wanted that I'm actually not good for. And that I don't need to worry about it. Like before, I thought I needed to learn how I can go on the road and work places like middle fucking nowhere, like going to Idaho or Montana, or going to like Chehalis here in Washington, and like have jokes that makes like more country crowds laugh and all that, can be more applicable to like more, because I thought, oh, well, if I can play a broader audience, that means more bookings. But then over the course of my career so far, I found that 90% of the time I did those shows, I never had fun. I was always struggling. And like sometimes with comedy, when you struggle, you learn. And those lessons are very helpful with your comedy. But I thought ultimately at the end of the day, these aren't really the crowds that not only I want to like focus on,
but you don't like connect with them probably.
But I don't connect with them. And that's nothing against those crowds. I'm not saying like, oh, they're shit or anything like that. They're good crowds. I'm just not. It's like bringing a rapper to a country music festival. Like, it's not that the rapper is bad or the audience sucks. It's just there's going to be a disconnect. And I started to accept, like, I don't have to go that route. I don't have to be the comic who goes on the road. I can stay in a big city and do the shows in the city. That doesn't make me any less of a quality comedian. That just means I found my lane and I'm honing in on that. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the shows that I've done that have been the most fun are either crowds that are like younger and more like hip and understanding of like how things work in the world, or at least like by that I mean like crowds that are like either younger or more diverse, or at least have had experience with diversity. I have always done so much better with those crowds.
What about like woke? Do you fall into like woke crowds?
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a woke comic. Which I know like woke comedy is like a big, like some people have really like hard feelings on it, and some people are like that's the only way to do comedy, and like in my personal opinion, I feel like comedy has evolved enough where whether you like it or not, there's space for everything.
It should be like music where there's like genres.
Right. Like there's space for edgy comedy. Like the people who just want to be like just say offensive shit just for the sake of saying it. There's space for that. Whether I like that or not, or whether you like that or not, like there's space for that. There's going to be an audience for that. Just like how there's space in an audience for people who want to like be woke comedy where like it honestly just feels like they're just going on stage and doing a TED Talk and there's no jokes to it.
Yeah.
There's space for that. And you're allowed to not like that. But I think a lot of people are mistaking what is subjectively good versus what is objectively good. Where like, oh, well, I personally don't like that, so obviously that's objectively bad comedy. When it's like, no, it's just not for you. Like it could still be good, but it's just not for you. So like for me, like with woke comedy, like I personally wouldn't consider my comedy woke comedy. Like there's definitely jokes that I do where like I'm making a point, but ultimately I don't want my set to feel like I want my set to be a good mix of like I'm making points about some social issues, but also I'm just being silly and stupid with other shit and just being like not ignorant in the sense of offensive, but ignorant as in like I'm just being dumb and silly.
Yeah.
And then I'm also having to make a point about this thing. So like with my like to go back to what the original point, like with audiences, like if it's like a woke crowd, like sometimes that's fun because then when I talk about when I do jokes that are about issues, like it's kind of dope seeing those woke crowds like look at me and be like, yo, this guy's making a good point. Because it's like also sometimes when you've been talking about dumb shit and then you make a good point and people are like, that's a great point. It feels good of like, oh, so I'm not just blowing shit out my ass this whole time. Like I can actually make a good point and like have like critical thinking to my jokes. But also at the same time, sometimes woke crowds are just annoying.
Yeah.
Because like I even have a joke about it where like liberal white people of Seattle annoy the hell out of me. But the point I make is like where like because you can get clout for being woke, people try too hard. And I feel like sometimes like I'll be on stage and I'll be telling a joke about race, and just because I say the words black, like white crowds will tense up, and it's just like y'all don't even know what you're tense about. Like, you don't even know, you're offended, but you don't even know what you're offended about. You just heard a buzzword.
Yes.
And you're immediately checking out. And like, I'm not saying people can't be offended. I do believe you have the right to react to a joke however you want. But hear the joke and then make your judgment. Like, don't just like hear me say the word black and then immediately check out. Like, I'm Afro-Latino. I'm black, but yeah, I have Latin roots. So like, one, I'm allowed to talk about this, but even then, like you're white. Like, why are you being offended about something that doesn't necessarily even relate to you? So like sometimes doing woke crowds is annoying because of that. But overall, I think like I can still have fun with those crowds. But overall, like lately I've just been learning of like figuring out what my lane is. Like, what do I actually want to be? And then just realizing I'm allowed to just focus on that rather than doing shit that I don't want to do because that's what everyone says you're supposed to do. Because like what's good for one comic isn't necessarily going to be good for another.
Right.
And like, yeah, sure, I could spend time learning how to make my jokes work and just as well as they would in the city, making them work in the country. And I do see value in that. But also at the same time, or I could just continue to hone in on jokes and crowds that I would prefer to just work with, because I feel like
there's pluses for both, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's, once again, that in no way am I saying like, oh, those rooms that aren't city rooms, they don't mean anything to me. Like I want to make people laugh, like regardless of who they are. But it's also at the same time just spending more time and resources honing into who I think will actually accept me. Because at the end of the day, to go back to the rap at a country music festival, you could be a rapper at a country music festival and have a great set, and people be like, that guy was good. But they're very less likely to actually want to look you up afterwards,
right,
and support your shit. Whereas then if you went to like a rap music festival and performed and you did well, your chances of people actually wanting to follow you and support you afterwards is much greater. So that's what I mean by like learning your lane. Like I want to learn more about what my audience is and just go there instead of just going anywhere that will take me and feel like I'm throwing darts at a board and seeing what sticks. Because it's also at the same time where like, I don't want to build an audience that I'm always going to feel like it's going to be an uphill battle at my shows, where like, for example, there's been comedians who they've either done like America's Got Talent or they've done something called Dry Bar.
Yeah, that's in Seattle by the Mormons.
Yeah, exactly. Where they'll do like, so for example, with Dry Bar, I've met a number of comics who they did that and they got a bunch of exposure from it, which is dope.
But that crowd?
But then it brings a crowd that expects them to be these clean cut comics. Like there was one guy in particular, Shane, I forget his last name. He has like all these tattoos and stuff. He has a Dry Bar special. And he was like, yeah, like people come to my shows and I'm like a very dirty comic and they're so surprised and they get upset. And it's just like, yeah, I did that special, but that's not me. Like that's not actually, I just basically saved up all of my clean jokes and then just did it on the special. And like exposure is great, but it's also like, I want the right type of exposure. And I want to bring in people who know what they're getting into, so they don't so then they don't come to the show and then have a bad time, but then two, like they come to the show and they have a good time because I'm what they want. Like it's like the relationship between the performer and the audience is similar to dating, where like you don't want to date someone just because they're willing to hang out with you. Yeah. You want to date someone because they genuinely want who you are. And like comedy and other art forms are the same, where like I want people, if they're coming to see me specifically, I want it to be because they are a fan of the types of jokes I do, and not just because they saw me on TikTok, or like they saw me do one TikTok about like Seattle stuff, and then they come to my show and they're like, oh, this guy talks about race a lot. Like I don't know if I like that. And it's just like, well, I'm sorry that you didn't have a good experience. Like genuinely, I want everyone who comes to a show, whether it's my show or not, I want everyone to have fun because comedy is fun.
Right.
So that's another thing too, where people just will show up to music not knowing the musicians and still have a good time. But comedy can turn off people very quickly, and people don't really look up or research the comedians that they're seeing before they see them, and then they will get upset. And it's just like, you should have looked them up.
It's the genre thing. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You should have just maybe watched a couple of jokes to get an idea of this, because sense of humor.
Check out YouTube, guys. Jesus.
Yeah, check it. Like watch them on YouTube or something, because it's also like, because then you're gonna go to the show and get mad and it's just like, no one forced you to go, and it's like if a musician was on like a children's movie and then their real music was like hella dirty and they're just like, all this musician talks about is like eating pussy. Like I wasn't expecting, they were on the Trolls
fannies.
Yeah. That is what we call a callback in the industry. You did a really good job.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's just very much like, that's another thing that happens with comedy, where just people don't really research going into it. So sometimes people come to shows and they just don't have a good time. And it's not the comedian's fault. Yeah. It's just, they just were like, we're just going to go to the show without doing any research beforehand on and like, I feel like that's the only art form or creative form that like that happens, where people will go into it blindly and then be so upset that it was like dirtier than they thought, or cleaner than they thought, or more conservative than they thought, or more liberal than they thought. Like no other art form. I feel like it happens with that, and it's weird.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
So did you move to Seattle for comedy or for work or?
For work.
Okay.
I graduated college and I was just looking for marketing jobs because I just wanted to get out of Florida.
So you grew up in Florida and went to college in Florida?
Yeah.
Got it.
And I was basically applying to every major city. And basically, it was funny. The company that I moved out for, I interviewed for the New York office, didn't get it. Interviewed for the Chicago office, got offered to go there to interview for the final interview, but then I had knee surgery, so I couldn't go.
Oh, shit. Why'd you have knee surgery?
Part of the bone in my knee died.
Oh.
So I have lupus. So basically,
whoa.
it affected my lupus. I mean, the lupus affected my knee, and part of the bone in my knee died. And I noticed because I was walking with a limp a lot. And I thought I just didn't stretch properly after a workout. And then turns out we went to orthopedic experts. They're like, nah, bro, like part of the bone in your knee died. And I was like, okay, well, what do we do? They're like, we don't really have a surgery for your problem. Like, we've never seen what's happened. Like, what's happening with your knee, we've never seen before. So we can kind of do this other surgery that's like for similar injuries, but there's no guarantee.
So you have like metal in your body?
So like they drilled into it and then like injected something to rejuvenate the bone. And like it kind of worked.
Yeah.
But basically the whole point of the surgery was like you either get a knee replacement at 21 when you're supposed to be like in your 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
Or we do this and it works, and then you theoretically are still probably going to need a knee replacement, but at the age you're supposed to get a knee replacement.
Yeah.
So it was just like, all right. And so yeah, that's what I couldn't go. And then I applied again thinking I was applying to their New York office. And I was on the phone, and the recruiter, who we've talked several times, was just like, obviously the answer is yes, because you applied to the job, but legally we still have to ask, are you okay with relocating to Seattle? And I was like, oh shit. But I've been interviewing for so many different jobs. I had no confidence. So I just thought, well, I'm not going to get it. So who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Future Chris can worry about it. Well, Future Chris did have to worry about it because I got the job. And like, I'd never been to Seattle.
Whoa.
I could not put, show me a map, put a gun to my head and be like, show me where Seattle is, and I would just tell you to pull the trigger because I had no idea whatsoever where it was. I'd never been on the West Coast. I didn't know anybody here. Like I knew one girl, but like we were like barely acquaintances. We did a college program together, and like I'm not saying that I couldn't have hit her up because I did, but like at the end of the day, she already had her own like friends and support system and all that, and we were different personality types, so it also just didn't really make sense to try to be friends with her friends. Yeah, so like I didn't know anybody here, and I also didn't know this is one of the hardest places to try to meet new people. So I was coming with my Florida ass, smiling at people and shit, being like, how was your day? And people like, don't fucking talk. So at first I thought people were being hella racist. I was just like, why don't these white people want to talk to me?
Yeah.
Why people in Florida want to talk to me? And then I was just like, oh, yo, Seattle's hella racist. And then I was just like, oh, it's because no one wants to like talk to people. No one wants to make friends here. And like, they're still racist here, but it's like different. It's like, they're not talking to me because of my color. They're not talking to me because they didn't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I respect that. And it's funny too, because at first I hated the whole Seattle freeze thing. And then after living here for so long, I started noticing I was doing the same shit to people who moved.
Assimilated.
Yeah, I assimilated, but it was also like, but I will say when I tell people, yo, let's hang out, like I'm like, no, I fucking mean it. We're gonna do it. I'm just really busy because I have a lot of shows, but we're gonna hang out. I promise you we're gonna do it. So I assimilated, but not the full amount. Like I still reach out to people.
So what do you think the freeze? I just don't even understand the freeze. Is it because of the people say it's the weather or what?
I think the freeze is probably like a play on words of like how it could get cold here and all that. But I think it's just more of just like it's like a freeze in the sense that like people are cold.
But why is that? Why do you think that? Where did that come? Does it come from how rainy and like the new Batman movie? Did you see that yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
I liked it. My friends didn't. But the fucking theme song was a Nirvana song. So like
really?
It was like the entire city was raining the entire movie and it was all grungy.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know what leads to it. I think it's very much. I think it's probably a number of factors. One, Because what I've noticed, like majority of my friends are transplants.
Yeah.
I rarely make friends with people who are natives. And I think that's
sad. Damn.
And there's an element of that I think of because since Seattle has been changing so much, there's a little bit of like natives just not liking that transplants have brought all of this change that they don't necessarily like. So I think there's a layer of that to it. And I think it's also with the natives, which I can't even knock them for it. Like they've been here their whole lives. They already built their system. And when you become an adult, you don't really have time to hang out with new friends the way you did when you were in like high school or college. So it's like you already have limited time and can barely see your friends as is. So then on top of that, you can't really have time to like go hang out with these new people you don't really know. So like I think that's also an element of it. But I think because like with transplants, they're new. So they're always looking to meet people. And then once they've made their support system, they also still remember what it was like to move here and people not wanting to fuck with you because you were new. So because of that, I think that's why transplants are also more willing to like make new friends constantly while living here. Whereas natives are like, I already got my 5 friends. Because what I've noticed too, like here, a lot of the people I know, like their close circle of friends, they've known since like middle school or high school.
Yeah.
And they still like, they're like adults in their 30s and those are still like their go-to friend group. Whereas like, I feel like maybe that might not be the case in other places. So I think that's probably what it is. Like all of that together is what really like makes the Seattle freeze a thing.
Got it.
I actually really don't think it has anything to do with weather.
Me too. I don't think so.
I think it's just more of like the coldness comes from like, I don't know you, so I ain't really gonna fuck with you. Or like I met you and you're nice, but like, like I got my friends. It's cool. Like it's like more of like that kind of mentality that's like heavy here.
Yeah. Maybe there's like serial killers and they don't want like how do we know if someone like walking down the street in Seattle is a serial killer or not? You know, like what if they're just like thinking about what's gonna happen?
Because they do be looking regular. Yeah. Those serial killers, they do be. I mean, they all white. So like that's first and foremost. Every single time I see a white man, I'm like, you're probably a serial killer. Yeah. And I know that's profiling, but like,
I don't know.
Now y'all know how we feel.
Yeah. At this point, I feel like people just don't want to talk to someone because what if they are the serial killer?
Right.
Like, you just messed with my day. And
at the same time, people here are so obsessed with serial killers and learning about serial killers. And like, I have a joke about that. And it's funny because like, I will get heckled during that joke, not for people to tell me I'm wrong, but to correct the facts that I say about the serial killers. Like one time I just say that I mentioned Ted Bundy had like 36 kills.
Yeah.
And like, I equate that to like, that's LeBron numbers. And this woman yelled out, she was like, wrong. And I was like, oh, like, are you offended that I'm saying that white people love learning about serial killers? And she's like, no, he actually killed 38 people, but it's suspected that he killed more, but he said on the record 38. And I'm like, why are you actuallying me about... Like, this does not matter. He murdered people. Why are we arguing the semantics of how... Like, it's past one. Like one more than one murder. Like, why are we... Well, actually, it wasn't 8. It was 9. Like, now you're making it worse.
Yeah, 100%.
And she wasn't like, oh, if you're going to talk about he was a bad person, like, do it right. He killed more. It wasn't like that. It was just like, he was great because he killed 38, not 36. Have some fucking respect when you talk about Ted Bundy. It was the weirdest shit.
Oh, my God. So why do you stay in Seattle then?
I mean, I do like it here. And to be honest, there's no city that I feel like is the city I would want to be in for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
Like, I love New York. I have family from Philly. I've always had this love and obsession for New York. But I also know that, like, after a certain age, I just do not have the stamina for New York. So, like, if comedy requires me to move to New York, I will.
Yeah.
But because I just don't think the older you... And everyone who lives in New York will also confirm this. The older you get, the less struggling in New York seems fun. Because like at first when you're in your early 20s, it's like magical. Like, oh, look at us. It's like 4 of us in a studio. Like, this is so fun. This is New York. This is what you do. And then once you hit your 30s, you're just like, I wanna die. I wanna die so much. But also because I love New York so much, I also don't want to move there because I want it to stay magical.
Right.
Like it's like the whole don't meet your heroes thing. Like I want like, cause like as a visitor, I'm like, oh, it's like kind of cute how there's like trash on the sidewalks and there's like a rat eating a pizza while also shivving like a pigeon. Like it's
quirky.
It's quirky. It's cute. It's cute that I saw 4 dicks on the subway today. It's so nice. I love how everyone told me to go fuck myself and I barely got off the train. This is magical. But then like you move there and you're just like, oh, this is no longer magical. Like this city's wearing me down. So because of that, like, I don't really like know if I would want to. I would only move to New York if I had to.
Right.
And then LA, I've only been to LA twice, and I remember the first time I went, I was just blown away by how dirty the city was. Because I just thought, oh, it's Tinseltown.
You're talking about Skid Row. That's like 9. It's like 9 blocks or something crazy.
So it's funny. Like, it wasn't like obviously if I go to Skid Row, it's gonna be dirty. But that's for reasons that's like. It's not like, oh, this is a dirty city. Like, it's because of just, unfortunately, people are homeless and this is just the situation. But like I was in other parts of the town that it was still dirty. And I was just like, all right, like how is there so much money and yet it's still so dirty? Because I forget what neighborhood. It wasn't Skid Row. It might have been either downtown LA or it was Culver City. But I saw human shit on the sidewalk twice in the same night, 2 blocks from each other.
Yeah, it's gross. Like you think like the Star, like where the Star Walk is, it's supposed to be really cute.
Oh, the Hollywood Walk of Fame. No, that's one of the worst places you can go.
Yeah,
that's I only went to the Walk of Fame just to say that I went.
Yeah,
just to be like, all right, I want to get me the fuck out of this place. And like when I went, I instantly saw like this is why any LA resident is like, I will only go to the Walk of Fame if I am being paid to. Like there's something there that is where I'm acquiring currency, or like someone is visiting and I like them enough to just deal with their request of going to see the Walk of Fame or whatever. Is it called the Walk of Fame?
Something like that. I don't know fucking.
Yeah, whatever the fuck it's called.
What my idea, this is my conclusion of LA. LA is like the opposite of Seattle, where the heart of LA is really grungy and dirty and kind of poor. But the farther out you get from LA, that's where like it gets more expensive. But for Seattle, like the tighter you are in Seattle, the more expensive property is. But the farther out you go, the cheaper it is. And it gets more like farmland and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big reason why I live outside of the city is because it's just so much cheaper out there. And I think and like as much as as I joke about natives and stuff, I do understand where they're coming from because this used to be a huge art city where you could be an artist living inside Seattle. And now because of tech, like you can't, it's made it so hard to be pursuing art in Seattle where that's your main focus. Like, yes, like in an ideal world, you could be only worrying about pursuing art and be able to make a living. We don't live in an ideal world. So like, I'm someone who I always try to be realistic. So it's like, yes, in an ideal world, I'm only focusing on comedy, but I don't live in that. And I have bills to pay, and also I like buying sneakers. So like I'm gonna work a day job for as much as I can until I get to a point where I can make a good living off of comedy. And like here in Seattle, because of tech, it's like damn near impossible to solely be doing whatever it is your art or creative form is, unless you're like popping.
Yeah.
Like unless you're like a Macklemore.
He lives in Seattle. I hope that's not doc. That's not docs. I don't think that's just. Let's go to his house.
Yeah, everyone go to Macklemore's house. We gave you the city. You can figure it out from there. No. Legally, whatever I have to say legally to not get in trouble for that. But if you want to run up on Macklemore, please wait 3 months. I feel like that's the statute of limitations. But yeah, like unless you're like popping, you pretty much like it would be very tough to be in this city, like in the heart of the city.
So do you think most comics have like a day job in Seattle specifically?
Yeah, the only comics I know who solely do comedy are those who they tour to a degree.
Like a fuck ton.
Yeah, they tour a fuck ton. Like that's really the only way. You can't. Unless they're living at home and they don't have to worry about rent, then maybe they don't need to tour a fuck ton. But at least all of the working comics I know who they're solely doing comedy, they all are like, they only, they basically, they're always touring.
Damn. So are you still in marketing then yourself? Or?
Yeah.
Nice. Is it still with the same company too?
No. God, no. That was a horrible place.
Damn. So what about you? Do you have to commute to the Seattle area also?
No, I work remote.
Oh shit, that's
so
nice.
I just stay at home and I do so many meetings with no pants on. Is amazing. It's just, and I cover the camera because I don't want to be one of those people who like they get caught slipping and they have no pants.
Oh shit. Or the guys that like jerk off on camera.
Yeah,
like, oh, shit,
which is just like, bro, you can't wait like 5 minutes. You can't. How horny are you? And don't get me wrong, we've all quarantine showed us is that man, woman, non-binary, straight, gay, bi, lesbian, no matter where you are on the sexual spectrum, no matter where you're on the gender spectrum, we're all horny as fuck. Because from the start of quarantine to 1 month in, dudes were on Twitter arguing about fucking Lola Bunny. And like that was expected. We've been doing that since before COVID. And like women at first would be like, man, y'all are gross. Like y'all are gross. Y'all are just so horny. Like go read a self-help book. Stop being so horny. And then 2 months later, women on Twitter will be like, I'd fuck the horse from Finding Nemo. And it's just like, so we're all horny. We're all gross. That's great that we're coming to terms with that, but we're all gross. And let's accept that.
It's all in the music and movie. I feel like it's like a topic you're not supposed to talk about, but it's like in movies and music 24/7. So it's like something we all digest and do, but like
fucking the fish from Finding Nemo.
I'm just like sex and stuff in general.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's so in like everything we do, but you're not actually supposed to talk about it.
America's just always been funny to me how obsessed with sex
You're like
is.
Fucking the bunny.
But then like it doesn't, but America is incredibly obsessed with sex, but also wants to pretend that it's like better than that. And it's like, no, we're not sex obsessed. Like, no, we're classy. We don't like don't do that. That's degrading. But then also we're gonna like fucking have a whole conversation about how they desexualize the bunny. Like, it's not the fact that they desexualized Lola. It's the fact that they had to even do that in the first place. Because in Space Jam in the 90s, they're like, all right, I know this is a kid's movie, but we need to make this entertaining for the fathers.
What about the M&M they just desexualized also? The green M&M?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was also funny to me because that was just like everyone, like Tucker Carlson just being like, no, yeah, before you wanted to get a drink with M&M, and then now it's like, I don't know if I can. And everyone's just like, why were you wanting to get a drink with an M&M?
Oh my god.
That was so fucking funny to me, that whole saga. And it's just like, yeah, the fact that we have to desexualize cartoonish the candy. We had to desexualize candy. That's how horny we are, where M&Ms were like, hey, buy M&Ms. They're tasty. And we're not selling enough. What should we do? Let's make one of the M&Ms fuckable. And it's just like sales shot up or else they would have continued the character. So like the fact that they had to even do that and that was successful is just like, yeah, we're horny as fuck.
So you're saying you're into sneakers. What's your favorite sneaker? Are those the ones? Or
no, these are Air Raids and I do really love them. But I would say my favorite sneaker is probably the Blazers. Nike Blazers are like, they're so versatile.
Are they comfortable though?
They are. At least the ones that in my personal experience, and I'm flat-footed. So like,
really?
I can't do shoes with like arches. I mean, I have to, because the only shoes that are made for flat foot people are like Vans skate shoes, and then like the Reebok shoes, the ones that they're like, you should have stopped resisting 12s, like those Reebok shoes. But I would say the Blazers, because I love shoes that are versatile and they look super casual, but then also like if you're like on a nice date and you had to wear like a good button up and like a nice pair of pants, like they could still go with your outfit. Like I love shoes like that, and Blazers are like that. And then obviously it's very cliched, but like J's, like just the retro ones are just.
I could only do the ones, I'm telling you.
There's a lot of J's, and there's a lot of J's that is just like, what the fuck? I love sneakers, but I'm not wearing those.
Yeah,
that's just too. It's like same thing with fashion. I love fashion, but there's just some shit that I'm like, that's just too fashion forward for me.
Do you keep boxes?
I used to.
I keep.
And then I got a girlfriend, and I've learned that I apparently just stalking on the boxes is just a waste of space. So I recycle them, which she's right.
Yeah.
It is a waste of space. There's really no reason to keep the boxes, but like I want to keep the boxes.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to resell shoes, but I never do because I just get attached. I'm so bad at selling anything online anyways.
Yeah. It's just too much effort. Like I'm going to buy the shoe because I want it.
Yeah.
Like I want to wear this shoe. And like I understand you can make a lot of money reselling shoes, but like also like that's not the point. Like buy the shoes because you want to wear them. Like I could go off about reselling like sneaker culture. I hate it.
Really?
Like because then it just makes the sneakers so unattainable for those who actually genuinely want to wear them.
That's true.
And then then they cost so much that those who actually buy them to wear them don't wear them because they're just like, I spent $600 on these. I don't want to scuff them up. So it's just like I buy shoes with the intent of I want to wear these, and I have X amount of clothes that go with them.
Oh shit! It's 6:38.
Are we over? Okay.
Oh fuck. You got to come back on, man. You're fun to talk to.
Hit me up anytime.
Yeah, man.
This was so much fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Not a hot take. I was just gonna say I've been trying to do hot takes lately because I think they're cool, but this isn't even a hot take. I was just gonna say I'm not a fan of The Bachelor, Bachelorette, but that's cool that you have a podcast.
It's I'll make this quick because I know we're at time. I used to hate reality TV, never cared about it, and then my last job, not my current one, my last job when I started, all of the women in the office did like the brackets where they would bet on who would get eliminated or who would make it all the way. And I was just like, I want to make friends. And the best way to do that, I guess, is to gamble with my coworkers. And I'm a bitch who loves mess. I love mess. I love tea. I love drama. I never get involved with drama, but I love knowing about the drama.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those shows, it catches you off guard. You just get invested. And then now I'm just in too deep. I love the franchise knowing it's shit. It's like the TV version of fast food. Like you don't get fast food because it's high quality. You get it because you just want to like just eat some garbage because it's going to fill you up and make you feel good for the moment. And then that's it. And that's what reality TV is. Reality TV is just like TV I watch because I don't want to think. I just want to shut my brain off and just like have colors in my face. And that's what it is. So like when people shit on it, I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's a bad show, but I love it. Yeah. But like I love because it's bad. Like it's not, if anyone out there is watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette because they think that's a legitimately great representation of love, go to therapy.
Go to therapy. That's where we're going to end it. Go to therapy. Well, this has been the NAST. Wait, first of all, what's the easiest way for people to reach you?
At Topher Mejia on all social platforms. TOPHER MEJIA. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch. And also in my profiles is a link tree which has links to like merch I've sold as well as ticket links to shows and shit like that. So that's the best way to follow me.
Hell yeah. This has been the NAST podcast with
Chris Mejia.
And we did it.